Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another Underdog fantasy stream here on the Occupy Fantasy channel. I'm your host tonight, Chris, and I am joined, like usual, frankly, by Chuck here. And we're going to go through, I think, Chuck, we're going to do a Best Ball Mania 5 draft this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm in full-on best ball mode. Been doing a bunch of drafts every night, so I'm ready for it.
Not only are you ready for it, I know you got yourself a little bit of a top five sweat going on in NBA playoff best ball, which is super exciting. Sounds like you're rooting for the Celtics close out here with the roster that you have. So we'll see how that goes, Chuck. But obviously, we are all pulling for you in that contest right now.
Appreciate it. Yeah, Derek White is going to be the difference maker for me. It's basically Derek White versus Jaylen Brown versus Jason Tatum for top three, and so Derek White's going to be my favorite player for the next, hopefully, only 6 days if they close it out. I was rooting for Dallas initially, but now, no.
So we got. It looks like we're waiting on one person to enter the next fast draft here. It looks like they just came through. So we're gonna get started right away. Really, Chuck. I know you did a little bit of a evening NBA preview last night. The first kind of big contest, if you will, for the 2024-2025 NBA season came out. So that's exciting. Obviously, just so everybody's aware, we're going to bring more to the table here than just obviously talking about flagship NFL contests. There's a ton of other things available through Underdog that we're most interested in. I have the ninth pick overall in this room tonight, and actually, it looks like we're going to have a decent shot to, I think, get a close to optimal roster here, Chuck. Just because I'm not seeing a lot of red badges in here, just a couple of them. So I'm feeling pretty good about this spot tonight.
Yes, looks like a good draft room. Like that NBA stream I did last night, they were all badges, of course, because who else is drafting NBA teams in June? But I mean, we're drafting NFL teams in February, so.
I went back and looked at the one big board team that you and I did on the channel together, and I'm actually super happy with how it turned out.
Oh yeah,
I luck boxed the Keon Coleman stack with Josh Allen and with Dawson Knox at like the very end. So yeah, I feel like that's going to work out quite. I don't know. It'll be a fun sweat anyway. We'll put it that way. So far, not tremendously surprised to see these players fly off the board here, but you really teed it up for me with the cover athlete of today's stream. For those who missed it, we put Bijan Robinson on tonight's promo, and I guess I'm a little behind his ADP at pick 9, Chuck. But before we went live, you were telling me you have come around a little bit more on Bijan here in the first round. I think on some previous shows we talked about how basically CMC or bust for running back here in the first round, which is the most obvious thing ever, obviously. But then behind that, how it feels a little murky with these other running backs. So I guess regardless of whether or not I'm going to have a chance to pick him here, sell me on Bijan.
I don't know. It's because like overall, I still need time to come around on the rest of the Falcons offense. But I mean, Bijan was good, and it's mostly just I was drafting a ton of Brees Hall, and I kind of want to even it out because don't really want to be super overweight on one guy in the first round. But I mean, any of these guys have a chance to finish RB1, right? And I'm gonna throw Jahmyr Gibbs in that group too. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he finished RB1. Maybe something happens to David Montgomery.
We touted him too hard. He came off the board. Wow, what do I want to do here? This is a pain point for me.
Yeah.
I want to take AJ Brown almost every time when these three guys are still available. So I am still going to do that. My portfolio is still a little light. I'll have opportunity to mix in Puka and Garrett Wilson, but really like throwing in AJ Brown here and being able to stack the Eagles. I'm going to continue to do that if that makes sense. An offense I want to be overweight on for sure. Really, really good opportunity to. I'll go quick here just because we have a quick turn pick here. But if we look at the Eagles in the Stack Seeker that we have available on OccupyFantasy.com for free, we're now looking for the Dallas Cowboys in week 17, the Commanders in week 16, the Steelers in week 15. Keep me honest. Does that sound right to you? I thought we had a little bit of a different playoff matchup there.
Sounds right to me.
Yes, that's right. Pittsburgh, the Commanders, and the Cowboys. Okay. So as we come back around, obviously, Marvin Harrison's name being adjusted to Marvin Harrison is banana land crazy, by the way. I was not prepared for that. I still respect his father, if you will, a little bit, and that just throws me off. Picking 16th, I'm going to go with, I don't know, Chris Olave feels so gross, but I do not really
Yep.
want Taylor or Saquon here. I think I'm just going to drop down to Devontae. Talk me through your feelings of just watching me struggle through that there. How do you feel about that grouping of players? Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Chris Olave. My just gut reaction is no right now.
I'm super out on Saquon. Can you switch it back to the board on the screen?
Yep.
So I'm out on Saquon. I can remember taking him once when he fell into the 20s, and I figured, like, if I'm going to take him, this is it. And then JT, I've actually mixed in a little bit after being kind of out on him, because my argument for JT is he was the best running back in the league 3 years ago, and he definitely showed that he was still good last season, but I don't know if he has that potential to. I don't think he can finish RB1, which doesn't mean you can't draft him. And then, yeah, I was mostly taking Devontae. Now I'm mixing it up with Ayuk. And then I've even done some weird stuff like Nico Collins at 12-13 pick. And Mike Evans, too. I mean, basically anyone, Jalen Waddle, just trying to mix it up because we've talked about on the show all the time how I don't think we really love anyone in the second round. No one stands out as like, this is the guy.
I wanted to ask you before I had to make my picks, and you made me think of it again when you brought up fading Saquon, essentially, as he did drop a little bit in this contest. Who is the lowest, I guess excluding true zero RB guys, right? Who is the lowest drafted running back right now that you think actually can finish RB1 in 2024?
Like the first person that came to mind was Isaiah Pacheco, but I don't know if he can actually finish RB1. I don't know. Like my other thought went to like that Tony Pollard, James Conner range, but I don't know who in there is going to emerge, like can emerge as a workhorse from that group. I mean, the safe picks just Jahmyr Gibbs, right? One of the top 4 guys off the board.
Can we go as far down as like, I'm going to pick a name here that I'm eyeballing. Just I think maybe some touchdown regression, some involvement in the passing game. Can somebody like Kenneth Walker flash that high, especially if Seattle's more productive on offense this year, or are we going too far down the board? Like you're going with Gibbs. I think that's fair. Late second, early third round. I think a player like Kyron Williams probably has the potential. A little bit obviously more risky, right? I think even in the fourth round, I like ETN with the Jaguars. I think those are kind of some of the names I think have the ceiling, if that makes sense.
Can you switch it back to the board? We're still on the Stack Seeker on the stream. Nice, thank you.
Thanks for keeping me honest here. Okay, so as we're in the third round now.
Well, it's just like, what do these guys, like you said, like Kenneth Walker, or even like the guys in the Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones range, what do they have to do, to be RB1? And it's tough to think of a path for any of them. But then again, like if you asked me if I thought Josh Jacobs could finish RB1 a couple of years ago, I would have said absolutely not. And, he ended up doing it.
And we're definitely seeing some of these names fall a little bit. One of which that I'm intrigued by, I'll see if he continues to slide, is running back with the Miami Dolphins. I don't really have a correlation-related reason to be interested here, Chuck, but we saw what Devin A-Chain was capable of last year in a limited sample, and if I get him like 10 picks behind ADP, I think I'd be happy with that here. So
yeah. Same.
Obviously would have liked to get the Jalen Hurts pairing with A.J. Brown, but I will move on and get a little bit of a different build going here, since obviously I feel like A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts going to be a pretty common stack. Not going to get the A-Chain play either. Perfectly fine with that because I've got an opportunity to just, I guess, chase closing line value with Stephon Diggs. We've talked about trying to find reasons to get exposure to these Houston wide receivers without necessarily being super interested in stacking the really expensive CJ Stroud, but I will take Diggs about 5 picks behind ADP here. That's fine.
So like Diggs fell a little bit, and I feel like he has been falling. But the guys like Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, I feel like they've moved up a little bit because even guys like Christian Kirk and Amari Cooper are gone by the middle of this fourth round sometimes.
That is not. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
Not entirely sorry, obviously, because I did it anyway. But what do you think about this move here by Jack Moose, the double tap of the first two tight ends by ADP?
I just don't see it. It's tough. I mean, he started with two receivers, so this is a construction, I guess, that you could go for this. I just don't see myself having many of these bully tight end builds this year.
Right. I don't really have a tremendous interest in any running backs in this exact spot. You did
Mhm.
mention Pacheco. I'm a little behind ADP, but pick 57 for kind of the next spot for me anyway means I am looking at that Kenneth Walker range. I'm actually going to just take Josh Allen, who's number
Yeah.
one in my quarterback rankings, and I think given where I'm at here, pretty top heavy. I have my starting wide receivers theoretically. I have last year's Bill stack, and I can build this year's Bill stack with all of Josh Allen's weapons still ahead of me. So I'm fine with this.
So I mentioned a bunch of these receivers in this range. I feel like they're going earlier because I used to be able to get some of them past pick 50 pretty regularly. Cooper and Christian Kirk. And one of the guys that are falling are guys like Josh Allen, Jalen. Like I was surprised Jalen Hurts went that early because he's a guy that I've seen fall a lot,
Right.
even as far as pick like 45. And then Josh Allen, like if he's there and I'm in the 40s, I'm pretty much just clicking him every time.
Yeah, because he's kind of in this group, of Hurts, Allen, Lamar Jackson, where it's really easy to just build Josh Allen stack because you got mid round picks, late round picks for all of his pass catchers right now. I think the highest drafted Buffalo Bills are, aside from Allen, obviously, are going to be Cook and Kincaid, right? And neither of them are, they're just outside the top 50. Kincaid going pick 51 right now on average, and James Cook going pick 56. And then none of the receivers, obviously, are even sniffing that. Curtis Samuel going pick 97. Keon Coleman a little higher, pick 71.
I'm still having a tough time getting to any of his stacking options, though. Like Keon Coleman, rookie. Okay, we can take a shot. We don't know. Dalton Kincaid is like the last elite tight end I'm taking in that first group of five, and then the guys around pick 100, Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakur. Like I'm taking them if they're past ADP, but I have a few teams where I'm running Josh Allen naked. Like maybe I take Dawson Knox in the last round, but I'm not as concerned about stacking him as I was before, I guess.
I think that's okay, though, because we know that he's going to have kind of that rushing upside, and he's kind of going to cannibalize the scoring, if you will, in a lot of weeks within his own team. So maybe, is Josh Allen, I guess if we focus on these playoff weeks, I'll go back to the stack seeker really quickly. Like, are we almost looking at pairing Josh Allen with more players from the Lions and the Patriots and the Jets than necessarily focusing on building out Josh Allen stacks for that reason? It's a little easier to tell yourself the story of Josh Allen, kind of two rushing touchdowns, maybe two passing touchdowns to a couple of wide receiver fives, third tight ends or something like that nobody really owns anyway. But these other offenses obviously have to kind of come along with Josh Allen to stay in competition, if you will. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a more interesting way to think about Josh Allen this year potentially.
Yeah, like now that you say that, like pairing Josh Allen with Amon Ra feels pretty good. But like, let's say the Detroit piece is Sam Laporta or Jameer Gibbs, just taking a running back and a quarterback in the first 4 rounds. I'm not against it, but it makes it really difficult to build out your wide receiver room after that. And then I don't love Josh Allen's weeks. I don't know, for some reason I just first the Jets and Bills. It just seems like not
Yeah, you're
not the
guaranteeing
best.
yourself it's going to be in a kind of, I won't say rough because we can't say that, but it won't be in an ideal weather environment either way,
Hmm.
right? Because those are both
Hmm.
outdoor stadiums in late December. So we'll see how that shakes out for sure. Got to think about my correlation a little bit here because I don't really have a ton cooking at this point, but there's still plenty of draft left for that. Have not yet taken a running back. I would have probably gone with James Cook had he slid a little bit. I'm a little scared of Joe Mixon, Rashad White. I don't really know how I feel about this. I think Mixon's probably slightly safer because we saw that Damian Pierce was pretty much dust last year. But I think even going a little beyond this, like I mentioned, Kenneth Walker, I think is kind of interesting. Kamara, I'm a little scared of as well, and then David Montgomery I like in this range as well, just because we saw him last year and we've talked about this a couple times. His cost hasn't really changed at all, so I feel like he's pretty viable as well. Um, Back to me. I mean, just purely because it fell to me, it makes sense for me to pair Kincaid with Josh Allen,
Yep.
right? So I'm going to do that
Yep.
here.
Yep. This is basically the only situation I've been taking him in. So, and I'm probably still going to end up around the field on Dalton Kincaid. So with Joe Mixon, like we've talked about how expensive the Houston pass catchers are and how it's unlikely, like not all three of them are going to get there, right? But then we have Joe Mixon, who we know is a good running back, and he's actually, I feel like he's kind of a little bit of a value at where he's going if we think the Houston offense is really going to be that good.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there was concerns with his efficiency of the last couple of years with the Bengals, but he's still going to be on a good offense. So we probably do want to buy him at cost. We were buying him last year in what we thought was going to be a really good offense at a similar to even slightly higher cost, I think, by the time we got to the end of the draft season, right? So if we do think Texans are going to be in a better situation this year than the Bengals, then obviously we want to be interested in their primary tailback. I won't have to worry about making that decision between Joe Mixon and Rachaad White because neither of them are going to be available for me here on the next pick. But frankly, I think I'm probably okay with continuing to wait on running back here because there's just nobody jumping off the page at me. I guess if I want to prioritize correlation because now I'm kind of down this path of stacking the Bills. Wait for Inkles here to make his selection. Chris Godwin, one of my favorite players in general, comes off. I have a little bit of incentive to look at David Montgomery right here with the Detroit pairing in Week 15 for the Bills. So I think even though that's a little bit further down the board, that might be what I'm willing to reach here for, Chuck. So I think I'm just going to lock that in.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I was gonna say Montgomery, or is Kamara still on the board? He has
He
a
is.
week 17 game with Devontae Adams, so I like either of those picks.
Maybe I can go with Brian's favorite wide receiver, Rashid Shaheed, in like the 10th round or something like that, and still get that Week 17 correlation.
Dude, I've been
Think
doing
that'll,
that so much when I have Devontae. It's just so easy. But Rashid Shaheed's ADP has, I feel like it's climbed 2 rounds since we started drafting this contest because he's going in the early 100s now, if I'm not mistaken.
I see 110 on average, but obviously that means he's flashing in the top 100 picks because you've said his ADP has gone up significantly. I think since we've started. I know Moose, one of the staff members here at Occupy, is tracking the ADP changes. We have a 7-day like trailing ADP tracker available on OccupyFantasy.com, but I believe he's actually got some charts he's cooking up as well that will show the overall ADP from the beginning of the season. And I honestly think I have some of that data here as well. So maybe some point this week I'll put out some tables showing the biggest movers over the first 6 weeks, I guess, of Ball Mania 5's drafting, since that's basically where we are. It's kind of hard to believe it's already been about a month and a half since this contest came out, but that is in fact the case.
And since you brought it up, I do want to mention there was one large move on the ADP tracker this week. It's Braylon Allen. He's up 18 spots from 211 to 193. And like I started adding him in a little bit before Twitter started hyping him up, and you can't get him in the last round anymore. If you want him, you probably have to reach a little bit. But we saw reports that he's probably going to be the backup. And
I just got that up on the screen here now. Up 18 picks over the last 7 days. And that is like by far the biggest raw pick move, which obviously is going to be easier for guys at the bottom of the board, to your point, Chuck. But obviously that is significant. Definitely want to have exposure to a player that also has that asymmetric upside if anything happens to that player directly ahead of him on the depth chart, that being Breece Hall, of course. Braylon Allen seems to be set up pretty nicely to be a huge part of the New York Jets offense this year.
And some of the other guys on here, like Josh Palmer, I love that because I've been taking him more lately. I've seen him get hyped up a little bit. This makes more sense to me. I think he should be going even earlier than this. But the one that I don't understand at all is DeAndre Hopkins. Like, what happened that he's going 5 picks ahead than he was last week?
So just overall bullish sentiment on this Titans passing attack. I'm purely just speculating at this point, by the way. I haven't necessarily seen that. I'm just trying to come up with an explanation for you. No more Derrick Henry. Seems to be a little bit of telegraphing that they're going to have the running backs more involved in the passing game, which obviously means maybe the passing game in general is going to be at a higher volume because they're not feeding a running back 350 carries this year, right? So I think that could be it. It's just kind of one of those rising tide lifts all boats situations. If they're going to be passing the ball more, he's clearly a top 2 receiver, if not the top receiver, right, alongside Ridley and my boy Tyler Boyd. So maybe that's the explanation. But to your point, I'm having a hard time clicking on him in his range still.
Yeah, I've done it a few times because, like I said, if I get locked out at receiver, like I'll take a shot on DeAndre Hopkins. I have been taking Calvin Ridley a little bit more than I expected, though. I see a ceiling case for long touchdowns, I guess, and I might be thinking too much about the air yards that Trevor Lawrence was giving him last year because I don't know that's going to be a thing with Will Levis as not as extreme as it was anyway.
I am a little surprised, I guess not tremendously surprised, that this is kind of falling a little too easily to me right now, Chuck. It feels like, I mean, keep me honest here. I think Keon Coleman is still okay. He comes off the board right before my pick. That's fine
Mm.
because I wanted Brian Thomas all along here. He's my favorite wide receiver in this range, first round pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I would have probably forced the correlation with Keon Coleman if Mr. Magoo here did not force my hand. So appreciate him doing that for sure. I think Brian Thomas has upside to lead Jacksonville in targets this season. I think he has potential to just slide right into the vacated role Calvin Ridley had, to your point. And to me, tailing that vacated opportunity plus the draft capital in this range, like he's just an easy click for me here in the 7th round.
So, are you down on Christian Kirk a little bit at ADP?
Round 4. So I think I have them projected for like roughly similar volume, which means that like just purely by cost, right? Like Brian Thomas is going to look like the better buy to me pretty much every time. I'm giving them both about 20% of team targets this season. I have, so they're both going to end up pretty similar in projection for me, but obviously Thomas is just going to be the better value if he's going, 40 picks later or whatever it is, 30, 25 picks later. I hope that makes sense anyway. That was a little bit of an explanation for why I feel that way. Kyler comes around quick, my friend.
Yeah.
How do you feel about DeAndre Swift?
I've been taking him. Yeah, starting running back because it's like, good.
I think that's who I want here. So that's who I am going to take. I was kind of toying with him versus Jaylen Warren, which is right on ADP, of course. But Swift was such an explosive player with the Lions, man. And I just feel like he's going to be in a much better situation without having to deal with the Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown threat that he had in his 1 year in Philadelphia.
And I don't think DeAndre Swift was bad last season. Like maybe he underperformed relative to expectations, but like he was fine probably for even where he's getting drafted right now. If he does that, can't be too disappointed. It just that, but there is a ceiling case for him too. Going off. So like the running backs in this range, I'm typically walking away with 2 of them, and I find myself clicking on Jonathan Brooks the most recently.
I mean, we know that he's the highest drafted running back in the draft class, I believe, right? And we know that Miles Sanders is just not very good. So those 2 data points on their own tell us he's definitely going to have the touches. And we think that, well, we hope is probably the better way to put it, that with better coaching this season, Bryce Young and this Panthers offense will at least be league average in terms of production and efficiency, right? So I probably need to force myself to click on him a little bit more. I don't think I have any shares just yet of Jonathan Brooks, but I mean, we're in the 8th round. And if we're talking about, like what I asked you at the beginning of the show a little bit, running backs that have potential to flash, maybe not all the way down here for like RB1, but maybe top 5, let's say, I'd say Brooks is probably going to be there in terms of projected volume if things go well.
Well, from what I've seen, like it sounds like he's going to be ready to start the season. And so I'm still not expecting him to contribute in like the first 6 weeks and be, like a traditional RB1, but I'm expecting him to be that by the playoff weeks for sure.
We've really seen this gap close tremendously between James Conner and Trey Benson. And I was very, very high on James Conner last year. This year I've had complete reversal. Trey Benson is definitely where my loyalties lie as far as flipping that coin right now. Obviously, the data point of Arizona taking a running back fairly high in the draft is the biggest reason why there. Also, with Connor's age, I mean, it just seems like Trey Benson far more likely to be part of their future. Connor, productive player, but maybe one of the things we talk about pretty much every show, which guys are going to be contributing the most come playoff weeks. It just feels like by the end of the season, maybe Trey Benson has vultured a lot more of the work away from the veteran James Conner, and they're trying to see what they have there, right? So that's kind of one of the things I think about with that ambiguous backfield. Who's going to be more beneficial for me if things go the way Arizona wants it to by the end of the season? And it just feels like Trey Benson being a part of their immediate and I guess short-term, long-term future is probably where they'll be by this December.
Yeah, I've been taking James Conner a lot more, but I feel better about Benson than I do about like Blake Corum, for example, as the backup to Kyron. But yeah, if they're both on the board, I've been taking James Conner every time pretty much.
It's not fair to do this necessarily, but I'm still going to do it. Kyron going early, Blake Corum going in this range. It just feels tremendously different than last year's Cam Akers and then Kyron at the end of drafts, right? Like we're obviously super, super high on Kyron Williams. So I think that's a part of the reason why Corum's ADP is being carried up so much. If Corum was, I mean, obviously, I guess, but if Corum was being drafted around 15 or later, I think I'd be clicking him all day long for the upside there if anything happens to Kyron. But it just feels like we're already kind of baking in the ceiling case a little bit too much here.
Nice.
Okay. Jordan Love comes off. We got a 1-2-4-1 build here. I don't really need to take Dak Prescott, but I'm really I like that he's still here. Quarterback's really, really sliding. I do need some Jets correlation, so I'm going to go with Mike Williams at wide receiver. A little ahead of ADP, but now I have my Week 17 game stacked with the Bills.
Easy game.
Yeah.
I think I would do that almost every time because there should be one of these running backs left over when it comes back to you. And if you wanted to take a running back here, again, I'm like mostly indifferent on these guys, except for Javonte. Javonte's still the only one I can't get around to.
I panicked about Raheem Mostert. I really don't know what to do with him. I loved him last year. Maybe I'm psyching myself out a little bit too much. We know the Achane threats there. We know Jalen Wright is here, the rookie they just drafted. And Raheem Mostert's like 30, 31 years old, a super fast, explosive player as Jack Moose welcomes him to his running back stable here. But yeah, man, I can't really bring myself to click on him here. You mentioned Javonte. It's Mostert for me as well in this range that I'm really scared of.
I was not clicking Raheem Mostert, and now like keep in mind too, I've done like 100 drafts in the past week, fast drafts, and so I can't click the same guy every time. But I've taken Mostert probably at the field average,
And like you mentioned with Javonte, I'm more than comfortable with just skipping him here.
Yeah.
And just going to the next guy, which on my rankings will be a player that I will talk about in about 9 seconds. It's the next running back that's right here. We also have that Rashid Shaheed correlation, though, with Devontae Adams, which is certainly tempting. With 5 receivers already, though, and probably a couple of guys late that I will still be interested in, I do think I'm going to go with Tyjae Spears with the Tennessee Titans in a 1A, 1B role with Tony Pollard. Made the case for Tyjae, I think, on a show last week. So if anybody hasn't seen that yet, I would encourage you to go back to that. But the TLDR here is that we expect Tyjae to have a little bit more involvement this year. He's got passing game upside, and he's being drafted like 2 rounds behind Tony Pollard, but this may actually be closer to like a 50-50 split for these guys, which means Spears is a better value than Pollard at this point if that actually materializes.
Yeah, this is another spot I definitely need to even out my exposures because I'm way over on Pollard, and I'm probably just under on Spears, but I'd like to be over on both of them.
So now we're rocking a 1-3-5-1. I've got plenty of outs too for well, not plenty. They're probably going to start coming off the board for like a second quarterback stack if I want. But with Josh Allen being a top 4 pick for me on this roster, I probably am going to be living in Gardner Minshew land for my second quarterback here, which will pair nicely with Devontae Adams if I choose to go that way.
Love that. Yeah.
But this is definitely part of that kind of fall of quarterback ADP, Chuck. I would say, look at all of these guys that have gone in the past 2 rounds. There are a tremendous amount of them that have come off the board.
It's like I know Dak is a value in this range, or he should be a value anyway, but it's hard to click him without CD Lamb, and he's not hard to backstack. You can just take Brandon Cooks right after, and I think Brandon Cooks is another guy that I've been kind of light on. I want to get more of, but like I'm okay taking shots on Trevor Lawrence. I think he's fine, but Justin Herbert is really the guy in this range that I think is tremendously undervalued. And I mentioned Josh Palmer's ADP is climbing. I've been getting as many as I can Josh Palmer and Justin Herbert stacks. Even if I miss out on Palmer, I'll add on like DJ Shark in the last round or something as he goes off the board.
I am like absolutely tempted, and I'm hoping that by speaking this into existence, one of these guys is watching the show and they'll just save me from doing this again, to just pack my bags with Nick Chubb. His ADP is falling. We got a report within the last week that Jerome Ford is just operating as the starter right now as they wait for Nick Chubb to return from his rehab from his knee injury. I really don't think we have like super firm reporting that Chubb is like guaranteed this extreme lengthy absence. And I'm still focused mentally, Chuck, on this idea that if Cleveland is treading water or competitive this season and they're competing for a playoff berth, by the time we get to the end of the season, if Nick Chubb is back on the field, he's going to be playing normal Nick Chubb reps, which means 20 to 25 touches on the ground in kind of ground and pound weather, if you will, in Cleveland, Ohio in the winter. It just seems like this is a spot that's worth kind of, I guess, straight up gambling on here in the second half of drafts.
Yeah, if he continues to slide, because Nick Chubb was one of my favorite clicks, like late first round, early second last year. I love him as a player, and I've been so doubtful that he can return to that. But enough. I do a few more shows with you touting him. I'm going to be clicking Nick Chubb every time in the 12th round.
He's just got this basically virtually the same ADP as Jerome Ford, 129 for Chubb, 132 for Jerome Ford. So those guys are very, very close to flipping here. I was fine drafting Chubb when he was going like 20, 30 picks higher than this, Chuck. So I'm fine doing it here as well. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how it goes in a few months, it seems like this room is going to force me to put my money where my mouth is here with Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I've been taking a bunch of Jerome Ford, though. I'm going pretty heavy 0 RB, and like all my favorite 0 RB targets go after this. And so I love taking Jerome Ford to have like a guy that I think is starting week 1 to kind of carry my team at least through the first half of the season, even if he's not going to start in the playoffs anymore.
Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford. Yeah, Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, and Jerry Jeudy. Which just gut feeling, which one would you rather own in this ADP range? Because they're all going right here from Cleveland.
I think it's got to be Jerry Jeudy because quality receivers are hard to come by here, and like he could not be terrible in Cleveland.
All right, I'm sold. We're gonna go with Jerry Jeudy here as my 6th wide receiver with the Cleveland Browns. A clear, like I think anyway, clear wide receiver 2 on the Browns alongside Amari Cooper. And you want to talk about teams that are super easy, I think, to kind of like backstack or just stack in general late. I mean, the Browns are right there. Judy's here. And Njoku only goes a little bit further ahead of this, right around the 100th pick in the draft. Deshaun Watson is one of these quarterbacks that just has also fallen like a rock, but does have the athletic ability anyway to give you some rushing upside around pick 160. I think I'm going to end up overweight on the Browns here.
Yeah, I didn't consciously do this, but Deshaun Watson is actually my highest owned quarterback on Underdog right now through 50 drafts of the like BBM rankings.
I mean, I may even have a chance. Well, it seems pretty likely I'm going to have a chance to get at least one Browns running back here too if I want that. And then Deshaun Watson may be sitting there for me in round 13, 14. I may just be backstacking the Browns here, Chuck. That may be where I'm going.
I like it.
As Jerome Ford comes off. And at least in this contest, it looks like, well, we know Ford and Chubb are going to be flipped by ADP. Gabriel Davis, welcome to Inkle's roster. I will. This Austin Eckler Nick Chubb decision is an interesting one. I will just say really quickly while I wait for this to come off the clock. I've already got a decent amount of both of these running backs, but I just feel a little bit better about the ceiling case here on an individual week basis late in the season with Nick Chubb. I'm not sure Austin Eckler is going to be in the same position this season.
Yeah, I've taken some shots on Eckler if I need a running back. But, like, who are my guys right here on the screen? Marshawn Lloyd and Ty Chandler, guys I've been talking about, like, the whole time we've been doing this. They're both up in ADP a bunch, so go get those guys. Marshawn Lloyd in particular, and I think actually a report came out about both of them recently, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
We talk about how I feel like I want to mostly fill my flex every week, Chuck, with a wide receiver, the way that I draft teams here on Underdog. So as I'm making these kind of ceiling based decisions at running back, I feel like I've got one of my two running backs every single week, except for week 5, of course, with David Montgomery. That's going to be contributing points in my lineup. Swift is probably going to be up there too, if there's positive regression for him being with the Bears and without having to worry about Jalen Hurts vulturing touchdowns. So Spears, Chubb, like these guys as my third and fourth running backs, super happy with chasing ceiling with these guys because I'm not, at least I don't feel at this point like I'm banking on their 10-point floor to just carry me at running back. I feel like I've already drafted that, and now I can just go for the ceiling outcome. And if players like Nick Chubb are quote unquote the guys you need in the playoff weeks, more than happy to have heavy bags there for sure.
Oh yeah, and this is a good setup for. I don't even like this is still 0 RB, right? First running back is David Montgomery, but dude, some of the teams we drafted last year were pretty gross at running back, and this doesn't feel super gross. We got 4 guys who could start by the end of the year.
Kendre.
Antonio
Ty
Gibson.
Chandler, I think I just saw a report. Well, I guess there's a couple things. Just saw a report today that Ty Chandler, I think, had like a 27% snap share. I think it's Vikings beats feel like he's going to earn potentially more than that this year because the Vikings liked what they saw. And I think that kind of jives with what I've talked about a couple of times on our shows with Aaron Jones, now being a member of the Minnesota Vikings. Jones is kind of always, or not always, but in recent vintage anyway with the Packers, been in kind of a 1A, 1B running back scenario. So it just kind of sounds like we've gotten a little bit of confirmation that that is the case here with Aaron Jones on the Vikings with Ty Chandler. And then Ramondre Stevenson, I think, made some comments at OTAs where he is preparing to be an every down running back this year, which, pardon me, is obviously something we should probably weigh a little more heavily looking at Ramondre's ADP around, I think, late 70s, early 80s at this point. Got to make a pick here. Well, just because I said I was somewhat aiming for it, I'll just take care of the Cleveland stack with Deshaun Watson, and I'll think about what I want to do in like 6 picks here. So we've got that taken care of.
Nice.
Little ahead of ADP for Deshaun, but would rather do that than make a panic pick for sure.
Oh yeah. Roman Wilson. It's a guy like I have interest in, but I never click on.
The Steelers wide receivers behind George Pickens are like a scary scene, dude. I have no idea which one I want. Roman Wilson with the draft capital, maybe the quote unquote most exciting of the bunch, but that's really not saying much. And that's no disrespect intended to Roman Wilson. It's just the Steelers receivers are just a very underwhelming group right now.
And was that Michael Wilson that came off at the turn too?
Yep, double Wilson's there from Mizzou vet and Jack Moose for sure.
I've been loving him lately as a late round pick.
I think I was there, and then they signed Zay Jones, so I tempered my expectations slightly. But I'm still interested in the ceiling there. We saw him have the opportunity to get there a little bit last year. Need is a strong word. There's really nobody from Miami I like want to reach for here just yet. I'll just Well, this is a player that has absolutely risen in ADP, but I'll go with Rashad Bateman just because I want exposure to good players on good teams, and I'm fine with having a Raven.
We got a couple of guys here. Tyler Algier. We've talked about the other zero RB candidates, and I tack him on here and there, but for some reason, I'm just not as interested. Even that, like he had a role last year. It was 1A, one not 1B, but he got carries every
Yeah,
game. I don't know that's going to happen this year.
yeah. You remove the Arthur Smith factor, and you bring in an offensive coordinator that is going to run a real offense. Now, I think that's probably what probably hurts Algier, but you still have the very, very normal upside case to make where you get a first round running back in Bijan Robinson. And if anything happens there, we saw Algier be able to handle the load, I believe, the year before Bijan was drafted. So there is still that upside with Algier as well, even if they go into the season with plans to diminish his role. Sometimes life happens and it doesn't exactly work out that way, right? That is definitely life in the NFL.
And if I'm not mistaken, Algier was really good last year. Like led the league in some category that's good for running backs. I don't know.
Oh goodness, we're really reaching deep for the hot takes here now. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Well,
As he comes off the board, how do you feel about? You mentioned Jonathan Brooks. I'm just looking at some other guys we saw handle the volume last year that are still like available down here. Chuba Hubbard with the Panthers. You clicking on him at all still, or how we feel about that?
yeah, I'm doing kind of like what I'm doing with Jerome Ford. Like if I have a weaker zero RB team, I'm not confident I have enough guys that play in week one. Then I'm clicking Chuba Hubbard at the end, thinking like they're not going to put Jonathan Brooks in a workhorse role right away. And Chuba Hubbard was good last season, so I think he gets snaps. He's probably the starter in week one, and so I like tacking him on at the end, but I don't expect him to really be there for week 17. I mean, something could happen to Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard, or maybe he's just bad and Chuba Hubbard could still be the guy. But I'm taking him in those situations. Yeah.
And those are really, I think, the only situations where Chuba is still seeing a tremendous amount of touches late in the season because Carolina has every incentive to make Brooks the guy. So,
Mm-hmm.
unless he completely just bricks, it's definitely not going to be the Chuba train, if you will, for the Panthers late in the season.
Well,
Um,
one of these running backs that just came off, Bucky Irving. I've been talking about him because I've been clicking on him all the time. He's one of the risers in ADP, and I saw two people post like negatively about Bucky Irving, and I have like everyone that I don't like on Twitter muted, and so these are two guys that I respect. One of them was David Gattiari. As far as I know, he's a pretty sharp guy, and he said something that really made me question my exposures. It's, are we getting Tank Bigsby with Bucky Irving? Because Rashad White was fine, and Bucky Irving has a similar skill set, and he's probably not as good as Rashad White at the things that he does. And so, like that really, stuck with me because we definitely got Tank Bigsby last year.
that's a tough comp. You've definitely
Yeah.
floored me a little bit and got me thinking about it. I'm gonna have to digest that a little bit before because I also am pretty high on the upside case with Bucky Irving, but
Mhm.
that's a very good floor case for sure. I guess just to push back on it a little bit, when you see a running back get the volume of touches and opportunities in football games week in and week out that Rashad White had last year, and then you string that across multiple seasons, I'm sure the data is out there on this that is more definitive than my open speculation here on the show. But I just feel like you're really risking uh, far more kind of injury risk over a longer time horizon, right? So
Mhm.
even if we get that situation where, yep, the Bucks love White, they don't necessarily feel like Irving is going to mix in anymore than their backups last year, like Chase Edmonds, and maybe we get Tank Bigsby in that way. There's still an out if something happens to Rashad White, right? So I think I still like Bucky Irving at cost here because he still doesn't have a tremendously high ADP. Sticking with the analogy, I believe Tank Bigsby's ADP flashed a lot higher than this at certain points last year.
Nice. What are you going to do here?
I don't know. I talked about Chuba Hubbard. I got 7 receivers. I don't really care for. I'm going to go with Jaleel McLaughlin because I
Nah,
ran out of time.
man.
How's that? But I like the ceiling with Jaleel, and it's one of those things that obviously there's a zero sum relationship here. If we're very, very, if we're fading Javante, then obviously we want to buy these other Bronco running backs because we feel like they're going to see more work. And Jaleel, definitely one of those candidates for that.
Yeah, my second highest drafted player this season. And because of your recommendation, I'm adding in some Estime at the end, just in case I'm like super wrong.
No, but I think that's fair because I think it's not necessarily that we're like super into any one of these backup Bronco running backs as being like definitively the guy you want. I just think we feel very confident that Javonte
Is
is
not the guy.
like doesn't have a strong hold on that job, so it
Mhm.
just feels like it's open to be won, right? And so these other guys are the guys that I think just at cost we're more interested in. So I've got 5 running backs already. I probably only want like one more, so I think it's time for me to just consider rounding out the roster with receivers. Uh, that was kind of a pick I didn't expect to happen there. I got 3 picks left. I got a Jet. I got a Lion. I got a little bit of an incentive here to look at New England's. And I mean, Javon Baker is interesting to me. 4th round rookie with the Patriots. I've got pretty much exposure to every other receiver on this team so far. Polk, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne. I don't have Osborne or Juju yet, but I think I want to just kind of mix and match with Patriots receivers because I don't think we know what's going to happen with that room yet.
Yeah, so I've talked about how I'm so down on the Patriots. I think they'll be competing for the worst offense in the NFL, but it's so easy to add on these guys at the end of drafts, particularly Demario Douglas, who I question the ceiling, but I think that he presents a floor that could help my team. And then Kendrick Bourne is like my long shot to kind of go off if I think I need to shoot for the moon in the last pick. And then KJ Osborne has been my like safe guy that I expect to at worst be their wide receiver too, week 1.
Going to potentially be the worst offense in the league. You're just trying to hurt my feelings now. It's okay though.
They are though.
I'll survive.
By projected
You just,
points.
I totally understand what you're saying. And it's definitely a real risk here. That's obviously why the ADPs are as low as they are. But the nice thing about that is it's a very low risk gamble we can take in certain spots with these guys that the projections are just wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they, if the projections are right, where it's not really costing us much. How often is Javon Baker as my 8th receiver going to flash in my lineup anyway? But if we're right, then we got something that might be really, really valuable late in the season.
I'm trying to pull this up right now. I'm pretty sure. So on Spike Week, it shows me which teams I have, teams drafting one or more players, and the Patriots are actually my most exposed team right now. They're at the top of the list.
Bold
Which
takes
is
exposed
bizarre.
yourself live on the show.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see.
In my one big board team that I did, maybe I'll just show it at the end here. I think I took a Drake May share late at quarterback. So it's Josh Allen and Drake May are my 2 quarterbacks. And I think I somehow was able to pair Drake May with like another player that's on the Patriots now that wasn't on the Patriots at the time. So it's like this really weird like confluence of things that took place. And it's the only big board team that I drafted. So, we'll see how that goes as the year moves on. But I think one of the things I took away from pre-Best Ball Mania season, as we kind of wrap up this draft, only a couple picks left, I definitely want to prioritize getting a little bit more exposure to the big board next year because it just feels like things are more wide open and people don't know how to handle it. I'm sure I know you've had a good experience with your exposures in the big board over the last couple of years. So you probably can speak to that definitely being the case.
So I completely agree. Just the problem is by the time I get to the season, I'm typically going to have at least one dead spot in almost every roster. Like last year, I think James Robinson was the running back I went heavy on in the big board. And this year, like I've shown my exposures on stream, they're a disaster. And so hopefully just a couple of those teams captured the ADP value. I get lucky with pod luck and get to the finals, but I am not confident in my big board teams at all.
I'm curious what that compares, how your exposures compare to other quote unquote successful big board MME drafters. Because I think just the lack of information is the only thing that's consistent for all of us, right? So I would imagine your exposures don't look that crazy compared to other people. I bet there's a lot of dead spots in a lot of people's portfolios.
For sure there are. Yeah. And so hopefully just, my 15 alive players are better than this guy's 15 alive players or whatever.
Got to do something about tight end. What? I don't know yet. I'll think about it for the next 17 seconds or so. Definitely don't mind a Conquo. or
Mhm.
Gesicki. Really, I think I'm just going to go with Okonkwo because I think he's. This is not saying much down here, but I think he's the most undervalued in this range. I think he's good to give you like 5 or 6 points per game on average, which I get it. It's not a tremendous amount, but as a TE2 with access to a ceiling this late in the draft, like I just think he's locked into a starter role at tight end, which I don't think I can say definitively. I know I can't say that for Isaiah Likely, and I'm just
Mhm.
not sure about Mike Gesicki, Jatavian Sanders, Tucker Kraft, even Jelani Woods. So Chig just kind of stands out as somewhat of an obvious pick here as a result. And then what I kind of wanted was a Miami Dolphin option to bring back the Cleveland Browns, but it just feels like I am reaching for that at this point. There isn't really a great one. So I think I'm just going to close out this particular room with another running back pick, and I'm going to go with Eric Gray from the New York Giants, who I've talked up a couple of times as kind of the non Tyrone Tracy option that is going to be behind Devin Singletary with the Giants with an opportunity for a bigger role this year. I'm happy to basically slam him here at the end of contests pretty much every single time I have a chance to. And I land once again on my favorite build structure, a 2-6-8-2. Don't have a bring back for the Browns in week 17, but I'm okay with that here. I feel pretty good about this team overall.
I just want to say with Eric Gray, like we've been calling out these zero RB targets that become relevant later in the summer before they become relevant, and like that was like a pretty sharp call that you had a few weeks ago before anyone was talking about him.
I appreciate that for sure. We can't get out of here without talking about all of the great things that Underdog Fantasy offers to fantasy players. This is absolutely, Chuck, the easiest and most fun place to play fantasy sports contests, whether it's these draft contests like Ball Mania 5 that we did tonight, or your higher or lower champions pick'em entry contests that you can play. This is really, really fun. I enjoy playing on Underdog. We do have a promo code on the screen, Occupy2. Believe Underdog is still offering that really generous 50% match for first time depositors up to $250. So if you're not yet playing here on Underdog and you want to use our promo code with that for that $250 match, you have an hour to actually take advantage of this quote unquote free line here with higher on 0.5 plate appearances with Shohei Ohtani. I do think that is obviously on the table, and you have the ability to pair that with any of your favorite picks across. My God, I mean, the number of options that Underdog has, Chuck, now, even this year compared to last summer where we were doing shows, it's just incredible. They have really expanded their offering, and that's why everybody loves playing here.
Yeah, they do. I'm trying to find that promo. I was gonna try to put a slip together real quick, but maybe next time.
What did I want to drafts completed? Pre-draft best ball. The only entry that I did, Josh Allen and Drake May. And I got Demario Douglas with Drake May because we did not yet know at that point. We had a good idea, I guess, that Drake may end up a Patriot. But I got that Patriot stack here in the big board, which you couldn't do that on purpose if you tried, right? And I got three Bills here. So I don't know. I got Jerome Ford instead of Nick Chubb. So I feel pretty good about this one.
I
AJ
like
Brown, Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
this. Looks like a go. What stood out to me was Drake May's ADP at 144.5. Before we knew where he was going, and him landing on the Patriots like lowered
Yeah.
it, and that
Yeah.
seems a little bit extreme for how far he's fallen.
But I guess maybe this is a little bit of a common thread with the team I drafted tonight. If I can start a roster with AJ Brown and I can mix in Josh Allen and stack the Bills, I'm probably going to like it pretty much every time. Also got Travis Kelce on that roster. Very, very interesting. Chuck, it has been a great time drafting with you tonight, as always. I do not believe we have another best ball draft currently scheduled. There will obviously be more this week. I believe if you're looking for live shows here on the Occupy channel, we're going to be back tomorrow night with a preview of game 3 of the NBA Finals between my Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. Chuck, I don't know if you're going to be on that show or not, but I am looking forward to watching it.
We didn't lock it in yet, but I want to run it back with Nick because we absolutely nailed game 2. So definitely tune in if you guys are doing any kind of betting or DFS for the finals.
Cool. Chuck, we'll look forward to your thoughts on Game 3 tomorrow night, and we will talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching, guys. And we are